hosted by myself and Matthew. And it's quite interesting how I met, you know. And his creativism and positivism is just always inspiring me in so many ways. So he's doing the zero limits, if you will. And it's quite amazing program. So many still believe only certain people have the mystical power to shape the world according to their thoughts, to intuitively know the right decisions to make and to see new opportunities and assets that have been hidden in plain sight all around them. The truth is, anyone of any age, gender, culture and background, Matthew believes, can positively influence and transform the world around them and transcend old belief structures that have kept them beyond the past and living with a predictable future. Based on 25 years of personal exploration and experimentation within the infinite field of possibilities, the quantum field, Matthew has been able to shape countless pinnacle experiences using a unique styled blend of quantum science, neuroplasticity and mysticism. Without any reservation, Matthew wholeheartedly believes everything is possible and has witnessed many of his students transform their worlds through their new upgraded love for life, introducing the Zero Limit Mastermind. So the Zero Limit Mastermind openly reveals the core secrets of old mystery schools, stripped of fluffy New Age rituals, blends them with the latest advance in mind research, quantum physics, neurobiology in a comprehensive ultimate reality hack training program. It's time to move beyond the linear third dimension, thinking, as he used to say, into unlimited fifth dimensional growth and possibilities. So Matthew is literally inviting every one of you who wants to know about his research and his work. He's quite excellent, and especially people that are having problems, you know, to find their place in life, if you will. He definitely provides a very, very good quality coaching, you know, and how to cope with difficult situations and to transform their lives into some very, very positive and creative future, if you will. So let's continue further. Here we are at the third part of the big picture evolution of human consciousness, where I will actually continue chronologically coming towards the present time. So in this part I will actually cover how Earth lost optical genetic expression, the hidden reality of the modern world, and eventually I will conclude with the evolution of the human consciousness. The Awakening books. So obviously, like in the first conflict, the orchestrators of the conflict, which appeared 4,000 years ago, they were still observing the outcome, and we can see that the abundance of technology was used that we are seeing nowadays. After a while, from 4,000 years ago, the solar system also recovered, and planet Earth, if you will. But the problem this time is that the atmosphere of the planet, it was no longer the same size. They shrink the atmosphere to the normal size that we are actually seeing today, which directly influenced the DNA potential. And the radiation that was present in those days literally put the humanity into the double helix functionality, and this double helix functionality literally produced a prison for us, if you will, in many ways, and they have put human consciousness into bubble, unfortunately. So the plan that they had orchestrated for so long, they came to be, and the Asian secrets remain buried deep in the sand, if you will, and the evidence is all around, and around us, the pyramids, the craters, everywhere, pretty much, the pyramids that were destroyed, you know, and for example, in Mohenjo-Daro, you can see actually completely fused skeletons, and obviously showing us that it was exposed to a nuclear attack, if you will, described in Mahabharata, you know. So pretty much as the water receded, we start to see the evidence, the scars, the Asian riverbeds, if you will, you know, and we still around us, we look around us and we see things that were damaged in the Asian world, if you will, you know, but some structure remained intact, and it's actually serving as evidence that high technology was present in those days, and the negative ones actually moved further, you know, and from 4,000 years ago till the present time, they were literally observing us, but from a distance, if you will, you know, covertly, and this is one of their ships, you know, under cloak, if you will, and this is when the cloak is removed. So pretty much they can control clouds, they can control water, they can control all the elements, but the plasma is the one which they literally use the most, you know. So in this situation, they're literally observing the planet Earth to a high degree, and as I mentioned, the atmosphere shrank to the point that it no longer provided the necessary components for the DNA abundance. The trees didn't grow that tall anymore, that big anymore. The animals shrinked, you know, the humans shrink, everything shrank, you know, the gigantism, the different body sizes, that what we are seeing, you know, in the ancient past, you know, it was all lost, if you will, you know. And we can see that even today there is a genetic resemblance, you know, with some children, some babies that are born with what the Asians actually had in those days. And officially the so-called craniosynostosis, you know, it appears in 1 in every 1,800 to 3,000 children. So the estimate average occurrence of the craniosynostosis is in every 2,200 children, and the human population from the January 2019 is reached 7.7 billion. So that means 3,500,000 children are born with elongated skulls. But unfortunately the parents immediately react, and there actually a surgical procedure that is actually performed to shrink the skulls to relatively normal size, and which eventually heals and in time. And as we can see here, all those different, let's say, types of red hair and similar things that existed, you know, they're still present to some degree. You know? And the difference between the normal skull and the elongated skull, in many occasions, National Geographic's Discovery, you know, History Channel, they started to employ graphic designers and multimedia experts to create a very nice, intensive, impressive visual presentation that giving us that all those elongated skulls were literally elongated artificially. Some actually tribes still do, but we are talking a completely different subject. They were all creatures with different. And once again, in this presentation, I only touch, you know, the humanoids part, you know, which are related to humans, if you will. There are so many different aspects of the mosaic which I didn't actually touch because it takes a lot more time. As I mentioned, the ones that survived, they passed a certain number of knowledge, if you know, amount of knowledge to the new generation. So the Earth actually lost the optimal genetic expression, as I explained in the second part, the best of the RNA DNA what organism can have. And few type 3 extraterrestrial species took over the solar system for various reasons. A number of slave type 2 extraterrestrial species were brought here to colonize the system and implement the will of those few ruling type 3. A new type of exploitation started in the solar system. Freedom was lost and the subtle manipulation began. The manipulation was so clever and so subtle that human creatures on planet Earth didn't know it existed for a very long time. Many positive type 2 left the system for good and migrated somewhere else. However, few stayed behind. For example, one of the cultures is partly positioned on the full moons of Jupiter, if you will. Through the crop circles and other means, you know, they still continue to oppose the deception as much as they could, and continue to covertly work against the controllers, if you will. New engineering was applied to the solar system to serve the needs of the dominant parties. They were using the sound gates to travel, I will soon explain. So the entire setup of the solar system that we are seeing today was pretty much set around 4,000 years ago, and the destroyed planet actually orbited in the region between 2.2 to 3.2 astronomical units. So pretty much, just to give you an example how big our solar system is, so it takes the light, you know, about 8 minutes to get from the sun to us, and it takes the light to about 246 minutes to get to the officially furthest planet, Neptune, you know, not considering the Pluto as a part of the solar system, of course, you know. So we are not living in a huge space with the universal terms are concerned. Many alien space stations were literally brought to this system, readjusted to the needs of the controlling elite, if you will. The opening on the south and the north pole of Saturn is quite interesting, because This is from NASA, and it's actually showing us our objects that are moving very fast and just disappearing into the hole. You know, sometimes they're coming out. In other words, it's a portal where unfortunately the abusive ones are coming also. You know, so there's so much things that are happening around the solar system, and as I mentioned, the Saturn is the crucial one for the dominant rays because it serves like an antenna. It actually creates a certain signals that are further amplified by the moon. So in other words, an object or the UFO, if you will, it passes through the rings of Saturn. It creates a resonance, a ripples, and this resonance or vibration, it goes through the astral space, if you will, and then it's amplified by certain towers that are found on the dark side of the moon and then actually transferred further to the Earth. So those are some of the objects that I was actually referring, and it's quite amazing what they're doing, you know. And as you can see, there are many occasions when the Saturn actually looks directly towards the Earth, and especially in coincidence with the moon. So once when the signal actually travels to the moon, then it's amplified. And Crow 777 and a few other people that are researching this, they have discovered the so-called pulse of the moon, which shows us that in certain occasions there is an energetic pulse that actually is created on the moon. This energetic pulse affects the astral plane of planet Earth, very similar like the gravity affects the tide in the ocean. In other words, it creates a mask. They have uploaded a highly sophisticated alien software, far more than we have ever been able to understand at this point of evolution, that actually mask the entire astral dimension from being for humans being aware into it, if you will. But as I mentioned, through dream control and similar astral projection methods, you know, one can definitely awaken or break that hologram, if you will, and exist out of the body for a certain amount of time. So this is a cropped image from from NASA, if you will. Again, it shows a huge cylindrical object very close to Saturn ring, and obviously what the NASA is calling moons. It's quite interesting how they define the moons, because moon is something which stays there for a long time, for example, but this object change direction, you know, change position, and sometimes they appear, sometimes they disappear, and NASA just simply ignore all that stuff, you know, like doesn't exist. You know? And in many occasions, the objects are in front of the rings, and as they go, they start to form new rings, you know, and similar stuff. I was quite laughing, you know, when I was seeing the video recording even from the Voyager 2, where the objects were literally going in this direction, you know, and then disappearing, teleporting to other places, and similar stuff, or two or three information, you know. So they know exactly what is happening, but as I mentioned, the shadow government prevents them to literally announce. So pretty much in this day, the two blockades that keep the human consciousness inside the planet Earth were created. One was around 40 kilometers, and the other one was something more than 11 kilometers, 11,000 kilometers, you know, from the surface of the planet. And pretty much what we are seeing nowadays is a huge controlling system. The ones that stay behind, one of the positive ones that also have bases on the 4 moons of Jupiter, if you will, they destroyed certain antennas that are on the visible part of the moon. You know, so all these like a lunar rays that you are seeing, they were not there before. If you start to really search for the photos from the 60s, 70s, you will see that none of those lunar rays are there, so they are destroyed afterwards. And because those antennas were actually transmitting the signals to the Earth, if you will, you know. So humans became beings without a purpose, unfortunately confused and in a state of amnesia. The impulse to use brutal aggressiveness for dominance became the main driving force behind most of the actions taken by those who were not fortunate enough to depart the solar system on time and avoid being exposed to the dangerous radiation that caused genetic mutation. The ones that were exposed lost genetic functionality. Every new generation was falling deeper into the confusion and unawareness, becoming more and more out of sync with the divine source consciousness which holds the fabric of the universe together. The 50,000-old agenda for planet Earth was accomplished, the Dark Ages actually began. We actually were put to this stage that we were wondering what is happening, describing the strange lights in the sky that are appearing, while in the same time the contacts were happening covertly. And then supposedly we progressed, I cannot use the term evolve, we progressed to a different stage where we literally express the, how should I put it, the lowest quality of existence. You know, we applied through Christianity, you know, we forced the indigenous population through similar stuff, not to mention the Inquisition and the so-called wars between the cultures. And the Muslims and the Christians, they organize huge wars, huge conflict, not understanding that it's all orchestrated by other forces that actually feed on suffering, and that's why nothing has been done so far to improve the liberty of this planet in the constructive ways, because it's fully controlled, you know, and they can control it from space, if you will. In many of the old art, if you will, ancient art, they are depicted the objects that they're all around the planet, if you will, you know. Even with this one, which is showing exactly the same information, if you will, that certain person is just looking ahead into the sky, looking at this flying object, if you will, you know. So the so-called modern times. The question is how deep the rabbit hole goes, right? So we started to become aware of their presence, if you will, during the First World War and the Second World War, the so-called Foo Fighters, if you will, you know. When the airplanes started to go up to fly, you know, started to fight among each other, they literally understand that there is so many things going on out there that are flying, that has the tremendous maneuvering capabilities, you know, and even with the incident which actually happened in 1942 in California, in Los Angeles, you know, which was known as a Battle of Los Angeles. There was so much ammunition that was actually spent to take this UFO down, you know, for probably hours, you know, they couldn't scratch it, you know. So pretty much they understood that the governments, especially FBI and similar organizations, they understood that there is something very weird going on, you know. And this is from 52, from Massachusetts, again, because, and this was a good one. The shadow government actually had to wait at least 40, 50 years to erase this from the memory of the people, because there were millions of witnesses that actually were witnessing the objects coming above the White House in the US, you know. And they employed the Hynek, you know, Dr. Hynek, to debunk everything. So he understood. Now there's a bit different story. You know, there is a Project Blue Book actually series, you know, which is trying to shift things around. But in those days, whatever someone reported, he came out and he said, look, it's all weather balloons, or it's all illusion and similar stuff. While in reality, they were literally seeing objects appearing and disappearing over the White House, you know, just playing games with them. And as soon as the fighter jets went out, you know, went up, you know, to chase them, they disappear. As soon as they landed, they reappear again. It was interesting to watch the old records, you know. And when you start to see, for those individuals that are listed in the slide, when you start to dig around in the net, and you will see that their first statements are completely different from what they have given 10 years ago. And we can see a craft which is definitely utilizing a plasma propulsion system and similar things. So I will talk about plasma a bit later. And this is again from California from 1954. It's again showing us that the plasma energy is utilized. And in 1957, this picture was taken by a test pilot near the Edwards Air Force Base in California. It's clearly showing a UFO following a B-47 jet. And this is what was written by Leavitt Conning Jr., the Lieutenant Colonel. He says, we have encountered a phenomenon which we cannot explain. Crews have been followed by lights that blink on and off, changing colors, etc. The lights come very close and fly formation with our planes. They are agitating and keep the crews on edge when they encounter them, mainly because they cannot explain them. It is requested further information be furnished on the subject, such as similar experiences of other night units. Further information is requested. So pretty much the famous Majestic 12, it's no longer the same name, of course, but there is a groupation of people where the John Forrestal was involved, of course. and he was killed brutally, unfortunately. But this group literally consisted of military and scientific community, and even Eisenhower, after Truman, he understood that the power is in wrong hands, that the people that were actually elected to deal with this matter, even Kennedy was in my opinion, was assassinated regarding to some similar subject by the shadow government, and he understood that that this is not going to play well in the years ahead, and the top secret actually began. Top secret, the UFO actually began to be more top secret than the nuclear weapons, if you will. The mainstream science, and especially Hollywood, is pushing rubbish movies, in my opinion, like Men in Black, you know, to disregard the organizations that were at place in those days. People in suits that they were coming and just recovering anything that was related to the UFO subject, you know. And the top secret, there, to the best of my knowledge, there are things that are known above the 33rd level of top secret, if you will, which include the UFO and aliens and particleizations, which also has to do with chemtrails, unfortunately. But I will soon explain. So the picture like this, the one on the left is from Mexico, and the other one is from the Navy. As you can see, many people say that, look, it's fabricated, but when you start to compare the one that I just showed you before, you know, that is chasing the Air Force plane, it's the same. So they get in contact with certain extraterrestrials, and certain exchange of technology was implemented, and the shadow government started to experiment with the plasma technology even then. So just for your comparison, what the normal progress of technology is on the public domain, the military progresses 40 years on their domain. So they started experimenting around 50, 60, so you can imagine how far they actually went with their experimentation. So pretty much they started to observe the different types of craft, you know, which one has a hole in the center, which one is pulsating, which plasma UFO is actually confined by the magnetic field, and which minerals or elements are found from the alien crash sites and similar stuff. And there was the so-called cattle mutilation. The cattle mutilation were happening before and are still happening worldwide, but they took place mostly between 1976 and 1982. Especially ranches near the Los Alamos in New Mexico were very heavily affected. So animals were found with missing organs, and the cuts that were made were so precise, that were made by the laser precision. In other words, they were literally cut on the cellular level. If the cell of the tissue is like that, they didn't actually cut it at all. They were just going on the border, just following the line. That's how precise actually it went. And in '72, Officer Gabe Valdez, whose son actually came forward in the recent years, and he said that obviously there were no aliens, that were all shadow government, but this record doesn't indicate what he is actually suggesting. Anyway, he was, Gabe Valdez was actually in New Mexico State Police at the time, and he investigated the cases that were appearing near Dulce. After examining 80 cattle subjects, he and his retired scientist, Howard Vargas, who showed interest in this bizarre cattle mutilation, noticed that 5 were marked with powdery white substance and glowing when exposed to ultraviolet light. The lab test from the control sample of removed hair from the glowing region showed high percentage of potassium and magnesium. So pretty much they were marking the cattle that they will actually abuse or abduct, if you will, you know, that were only visible on an ultraviolet light. Pretty the same was observed with the human abductees. They were literally marking them with certain powdery, if you will, or elements that are visible on the ultraviolet. And the fluorescence, if you're not familiar with, is the emission of light by a substance that has absorbed light or other electromagnetic radiation. Especially the people that have an implant, they literally have them most of the time. This is Joanna Poda from Italy, and unfortunately she was abused by negative ETs, if you will, and there were 18 times that she recalls that she actually gave birth to the alien human hybrid, if you will. One was even filmed and recorded you know, and publicly shown. And the bottom ones are the creatures that she actually shot with her mobile phone. Anyway, to continue, records show that strange lights were seen regularly in the night skies over Sterling, Colorado from November 96 to the spring of 1977. Logan County Sheriff Harry Tex Graves suspected that the UFOs were linked to 72 cattle mutilations in the area. Photos of the lights were taken by reporter Bill Jackson of the Sterling Journal, advocate for the Gazette-Telegraph. So take example of this thing. This was actually filmed in 1976 with Kodak high-speed recording film, and a stationary self-luminescent object in the sky that stayed for about 45 minutes. During the entire time it was morphing into other shapes. So the real question is how a culture which is so advanced, that has surpassed the physical means and obviously can reshape, teleport and similar stuff, is doing this stuff to the cattle, if you will, you know. But it's not cattle, they're also humans that were discovered with the missing parts. In other words, some of those ET creatures that are here for at least 12,000 years, they are meat eaters. They prefer certain parts of the cattle, if you will, you know, that they are just like humans. They are assimilating them. So this one was on the news, you know, and it was quite interesting because as the UFO came, you know, it was under plasma shield. It was just like a glowing disc, if you will. It lifted the cattle, you know, and then there was a small flash, and then it disappeared, you know. And so many people came out with those video recordings, and they are shown on the television, but that's very, very dense. The one that I was referring previously, it's something similar to this glowing. So some person asked me, how can we distinguish the good ones from the bad ones? We can't. Pretty similar, like we have people, let's say 1,000 people, there could be bad people, there could be good people, there could be just normal people. Every one of those cultures are utilizing the electromagnetic spectrum. They can utilize plasma, they can create technology, whatever. So the certain specific type of plasma shield cannot determine for sure if the creatures behind piloting this craft are positive or negative. This is from Brunchili, Australia, a famous one from March 28, 92. And it's quite amazing piece of evidence. And Australia is like every other country, you know, it's quite interesting hotspot, you know. And this is from 2013. Take a look at the precision of the cut of this animal on the top left, you know, and it's just amazing. And sometimes they don't even bother to return them to the ground. They just drop them from above, and they are found, you know, on the power towers or similar stuff. And the FBI keeps a huge record of this, you know. They had a huge pressure from the public, you know, what is happening, because the public, it was so widespread that the public demanded answers, and they couldn't provide them because they continued to happen. And during about 50s, 60s, military actually found out that certain type of UFOs are vulnerable to radar. In other words, they can actually deploy so much ammunition they will not even scratch the flying vehicle. But if they, let's say, focus a beam of a radar, you know, particles, you know, it will disrupt the guiding systems of the craft itself. In other words, the whole telemetry, the whole guiding system or controlling system functions on the base of transfer information through light. So when this radar actually projects a beam of particles, it disrupts this like a fiber optics transfusion of information, if you will, you know, and that's how they actually got crushed. Otherwise, with the firepower, they are invincible, if you will. And most of the time, that's how they have gotten down. The military started to operate on back-engineered technology, you know, with craft that were recovered, you know. So TR-3B Astral was definitely involved in the 1989 Belgian sightings, you know, and similar. And you can see where the one that is experimenting, while the other ones, you know, it's far more sophisticated. It appears, disappears, changes, lets it direction from one side to a completely right angle, you know, something which will crush the bones, you know. And quite often the real ones, they are spotted, you know, just charging from the thunder strikes, if you will, because as I will soon explain, the thunder strikes are actually having raw plasma which they're actually accumulating, you know. This is the US-wide Eisenhower, as you can see, and it's clearly showing us that they are aware that there are UFOs in the oceans. In fact, most of the UFOs are seen over the oceans of the world. So what they are actually doing is, whenever there are storms, especially the huge cylindrical ships around Saturn or Jupiter, where there is a huge storm, it's a lot bigger than planet Earth, they are literally charging from these plasma discharges. And this raw plasma, if you will, their technology is able to change into non-thermal or thermal plasma, whatever the case is, you know, because the plasma itself is a source of unlimited energy, if you will. So the plasma temperatures in lightning, just as a statistic, it's 28,000 degrees Celsius. It's extremely hot, which is happening. That's why we are seeing. So we don't see the fine structure, we just see the pulsating plasma shields, because they are magnetically confined. They're using a magnetic field to create this field which pulsate. That's why when you see them moving, they just flash. You know, I was seeing this in the astral plane all the time. You know, the same repetition of happening, and they're pretty much everywhere where and usually they use this when they go in deep ocean. The deep ocean has a tremendous pressure, it can crush everything, but when they are under this plasma shield, they go undetected, you know, they go very deep down, you know. And there's so many stuff which are going on. For example, this is from International Space Station live feed, and it was a really good catch, because look at this, you know, it's a good stuff when there is a contrast applied. This was sent to me by one lady that I did a talk in Sydney in 2014, and she said that she snapped this. It's like a pole, if you will, you know, which is releasing, you know, those orbs, if you will, bolts of light, which I will explain shortly as I come to that section. And you can see here that they're utilizing the plasma energy shield in so many different ways. That's why it's glowing, because you don't see it. That's why you don't see the fine structure, because the shield is still on, if you will, you know. And it's happening, and it was quite confusing. And for example, on the bottom left pictures, it was discovered that certain diamond type of crafts, if you will, that have this energy field are very dangerous, because whenever humans come very close to it, you know, the exposed radiation causes, you know, cancer and similar things, you know, and some even go very fast. They just snap through the sky, you know. And for the shadow government, which knew that something weird is going on, it was like a puzzle. They didn't know what to do with the public, you know. Should they tell the public or no? You know, it's just that they don't have how to tell the public that you don't control your country, you don't control your airspace, you don't control water, you know. And there are entities out there flying, do whatever they want, you know. Especially how to explain the alien implants and abductions and similar stuff. So that's why they assessed, you know, with the top psychologists, you know, how would humans on a wider scale react, you know, with a conclusion that we are not alone, and not even that those beings are actually doing something, let's say, to us. And they found a way that humanity is not ready. It cannot cope, you know, with the information. So that's why they started to introduce certain movies, you know, that will definitely introduce certain ideas that we are not alone, you know, like Star Wars, you know, especially Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If you guys remember, it was very hit when it came out, you know. Knowing was also interesting, and especially a good signature was left by the X-Files, at least the first season, you know, which is actually dealing with the problems which certain establishment of FBI had to face, you know, dealing with all these matters, if you will, you know, and the cover-up. And quite often, you know, Jupiter ascending is showing exactly what is happening, but it's very difficult to talk about this thing, because the psychology of people is still not ready, you know. While in parallel it's all happening. For example, those Hasdenen lights are unexplained lights that are observed for 12-kilometer stretch in the Halsden Valley in rural central Norway, and pretty much in other places, you know, the shadow government has released, you know, classified photos like the one on the bottom left, you know, which is showing, you know, and on many occasions there are even crafts which appear just in front of the airplane, and the airplane needs to land, if you will, you know, and they contact the control tower, and they have to circle around a couple of times until the path clears up and similar stuff. And there are crop circles, of course, which I will cover shortly, which play their own way. And the shadow government has definitely deployed, you know, the special forces to deal with this. And there are many casualties that appear from those contacts. And sometimes the UFOs want to play hide and seek, you know, or, you know, with the fighter jets, which are demonstrating the power of the flying, you know, and similar things. And the military was also involved. We have to understand that most part of the military, they have nothing to do with it. They're just normal people like us, you know, they're doing their jobs and they're under orders. But unfortunately, there are groups, you know, which are beyond the government, beyond the military, the official military, if you will, you know, which is actually causing all this, you know, to be covered up, you know. And it's quite interesting because the US doesn't step forward, but it allows like Chile or other countries, you know, to provide certain evidence, you know. For example, this is a good one from 2014, which is showing, you know, in the infrared how hot this plasma is that I'm referring, you know. So you can see here, and this object was not visible on the visible part of the spectrum at all, you know. This is another one. High-speed UFO capture on the border patrol video over Guatemala, Puerto Rico, which again has a huge military base, and there are a few bases, alien bases as far as I know, around the Puerto Rico area, you know. And sometimes one object goes into the water, and then two objects come out, you know. And it's quite amazing what is happening, you know. And important thing to understand that certain groups they like violence. They actually feed on violence, if you will, you know. So this is from BBC News, which shows the UFOs alongside F-16 on an Israeli military training exercise on September 19, 2007 near the Syrian border. So it is quite amazing what this video is actually showing. So please.
Large-scale military exercise. Relations with Syria are on a knife edge. Some here are even talking of war. Israeli fighter pilots here on a training run. But on a top-secret mission earlier this month, Israeli jets are thought to have flown into Syrian airspace. There's now talk they may have bombed a nuclear weapons facility there. Israel's government has refused to comment.
So the same object that we saw, I have seen in the Astral plane, and they can cloak quite easily, you know, they can hover in the clouds, if you will, and they perform the same stuff, while the life force absorption, if you will, is taking place, which I will soon explain how all the dynamics works. So, as mentioned, I focus on this presentation on the missing pieces of the puzzle. You know, most of the information exists out there in one form or another, but it's not interconnected into understandable picture. That's why I'm trying to connect, you know, the pieces for you, how it actually it works. So that's another quick snapshot of what we were just observing. As you can see, they can stop the violence if they like, you know. No one can stop them, but they actually support the violence, and you see the plasma orbs that are literally released, you know. They actually go and feed from the violence itself, you know. So this is just a slow motion. Again, we can see it towards the, and like I said, this is not edited video. This is something that actually was live on television. You know? So as we can see here, you know, they're all around these places, you know, where things are happening, you know, and they can stop the conflict, but they don't. Another thing that is very important to understand, many people ask me how come, you know, asteroid never hit the Earth, you know, or meteorite or whatever, because this planet has been quarantined. Every time when there is an asteroid, especially the asteroids that exist between the Mars and Jupiter, that remains from the planet that I discussed on the first part, sometimes they're actually having a very weird trajectories and they pumped into the atmosphere. But it's quite interesting that every time before the asteroid hits, a UFO comes and destroys the meteor. And for example, this one is that you will just see, you know, it's just the UFO went in the opposite direction. It creates a plasma shield discharge, and as this like a capacitor, if you will, you know, as a discharge, it destroyed the entire meteor. Please take a look. It's a slow motion. It will come from the opposite side. As it moves, it will activate a plasma discharge, and it will actually break the entire meteorite into small fragments, and that will disintegrate completely, so nothing will actually fall down on planet Earth. In other words, they're keeping this planet... Anyway. In a way. Yeah. This is from Colorado, USA. As we can see, the military is deploying the back engineer technology. I shouldn't tell this, but there we go anyway. So we can see there is some activity which is going on with a B-2 bomber, if you will. So once when you zoom in, you start to see what technology they have. So when you compare that image the images that I just showed you with the one from 2015, which again shows another B-2 bomber flying over Missouri, you can see the same technology which is applying. So in other words, the shadow government has got so evolved and advanced, if you will, into technological sense that they are utilizing the plasma propulsion system, if you will. You know, this is the Chinese Air Force escorting UFO caught on Google Maps in 2013, and there are so many different weird things that are going on, like in Area 51 on the bottom right picture, you know, they're utilizing certain types for plasma injection. So in other words, the testing UFO, if you will, you know, comes charges on this the same the Chinese are using. So I'm not allowed to talk about this too much, but pretty much they're using the same principle, and the underground world is still going in parallel. So pretty much around 80% of the Earth's surface, if you will, is just scattered with tunnels, you know, from the shadow government in parallel with the alien ones, if you will. So Phil Schreider was the one who actually brought this information to high degree, but unfortunately, you know, he was murdered after 13 attempts of his life. The 14th time he was literally brutally murdered, and he was explaining his encounter with the great beings, you know, how they actually split his chest and he lost a couple of fingers and similar stuff. So I will leave the comment to you regarding to this, but pretty much the satellite imaginary tells pretty much, you know, what needs to be known. Phil Schneider, yeah. You can look him up online. You know. So I communicated with Robert Salas, you know, through Facebook, and his work is amazing, and he had a tremendous courage to step forward and to talk about how the UFOs are literally messing with the nuclear missile sites, if you will. So that means that they can activate and deactivate anytime they want, if you will. And sometimes the military, actually the Air Force, you know, is deploying, you know, fighter jets in order to shut them down, but unfortunately they are no match for the technology. As soon as the rockets comes out, you know, the object accelerates to high degree, and it's actually, the rockets don't actually hit anything. And quite often there are occasions where the airplanes are taken down, and you have air crash investigations on History Channel, which is showing us, you know, that everything is just a fatal error of the motors and similar things, you know, which is not the case, you know. So as soon as the military understood, you know, that there's so many things going on, they start to employ the radar technology, you know, how to detect them. So they came up with a simple solution: chemtrails. Why chemtrails? The composition of the they're used for different purposes, you know, I don't want to be misquoted in the future. They're multi-purpose usage, there's no doubt about it. But the chemical composition inside the chemtrails, as soon as a fast-flying object with a plasma shield around it. It goes through the chemtrail. It agitates the molecules in the chemicals, in the chemical compounds of the chemtrails. As soon as it agitates the molecules, they can pick that up from their infrared satellite system in space. In US, as of January 2017, a total of 9 satellites carrying space-based infrared system or space tracking and surveillance system payloads had been launched into space to meet the United States infrared space surveillance needs through the first 2 or 3 decades of the 21st century. In other words, SPIRS is an integrated system of systems that include satellites in geosynchronous orbit, sensor hosted on satellites in highly elliptical orbit, and ground-based data processing and control. Pretty much there is not a fly that can go through unnoticed from their infrared system they have covered. In other words, what they're trying to do as much as they can, they try to pinpoint the UFO traffic in parallel with the human air traffic. And the chemtrails are the ones. There are also weather modifications that are used, but and many occasions there are UFOs which are spotted that they are literally destroying the chemtrails because also the chemical composition is disrupting their guidance system. So they start to flash like a blink, 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 and they actually create a hole into the chemtrail, you know, and then eventually the whole chemtrail actually disappears, if you will, you know. So they can see from their US and NATO surveillance system everything pretty much which is going on the infrared spectrum. Unidentified submerged object, or USOs, if you will, sightings from April 17, 2012 to April 25, 2012, captured by NASA satellite in South Atlantic waters east of Argentina. So you can see how huge concentrations are actually happening. Those are the strange, mysterious glow that were seen over the Pacific Ocean on 24th of August 2014 by the pilots of the flight from Hong Kong to Alaska. And you can see this is how it looks on the visible light, if you will. The entire ocean was illuminated by moving lights into the ocean. You know, it's just quite amazing piece of evidence. And pretty much the same stuff that was observed, just radiating a beam of light, has been observed. There are a couple of websites on the internet that are trying to debunk the pictures, like the one on the right. You know that there is just like a problem with the camera, or the effect of the camera or the mobile phone, which is causing this effect, but that's not the case at all. And another thing which is important is that the shadow government understood that the only way, according to their ways, you know, to deal with this matter is to get as much as possible alien technology, so they can militarize the technology and try to fight back. So, for example, this is from International Space Station live feed from April 17, 2016, which the object actually hovers in the atmosphere, you know, and then there is a huge plasma death ray, if you will, because so far the shadow government understood, you know, which frequencies are used and which type of plasma can be utilized to neutralize the vehicle, if you will. And as soon as the death ray, if you will, is shot, you know, usually there is like a white flash for a couple of, let's say, a second or two maximum, and then the object usually accelerates and depart, and they missed, you know, if you will, you know. So pretty much, this is an interesting part. Probably most of you have seen it, and it's from STS-48 Space Shuttle Discovery. It actually records a shadow government military installation firing a plasma beam weapon towards the UFO in orbit. In other words, the flash that I was explaining occurs, and then the plasma weapon is released like a plasma laser, and as soon as that happens, the UFOs depart, you know. So pretty much that's how it goes. So those are the mysterious lights and beams between 17 and 31 of August 2014. It's actually in the area east of Japan in North Pacific. As you can see, some of those objects are huge. This particular object is 30 kilometers big, if you will. They're big objects, you know. And comparing to the ones that are observed on Saturn or near the Sun, those are just tiny ones. So those belong. So this is what I was seeing most of the time when I was doing my astral travels, if you will, you know. there is not much that the shadow government can do regarding to this. They're simply just technologically too advanced, you know. And in 2012 also, you know, James Cameron with his, you know, Challenger Deep, you know, because Challenger Deep is the deepest known point in Earth, and it's almost 11,000 meters, and he actually heard some robotic noises, you know, voices that are appearing there, you know, and other things that he is not allowed to talk about it, of course, you know. And as I mentioned, certain type of ET groups are utilizing the hydrothermal vents. They literally went inside and go into the mantle, the cavities of mantle, and then even further down to the inner earth, and they use this area here, which looks like a moving mud underwater, if you will, you know. And it's quite amazing, you know, what is happening. And the whistleblower from NSA, you know, Edward Snowden, he said in one point, the highest levels of government don't know what to do about UFOs. And the official story that they are all merely weather balloons or natural phenomena have been clearly dismissed. If anything, these documents speak about UFOs as if they are surely guided by intelligence beyond our own. As it turns out, the most credible and unexplicable sightings are of vehicles that have been spotted leaving the seafloor at hydrothermal vents and directly entering the solar orbit. In other words, this is the global distribution of the hydrothermal vents around the world, at least the known ones. So they're utilizing those just to penetrate in and out, you know, and the speed that they are achieving is just remarkable, you know. And which really takes us to the question, are we really in control of the solar system, if you will? Quite often when you see those like a holes in the clouds, if you will, you know, especially with the rainbow light, you know, be sure that it's definitely a craft which is masked, you know. When I started to really push into the astral traveling, I used to see the anchored, you know, UFOs, you know, some smaller size, some bigger size. And when I got in chance that I spotted them in the astral plane very close to the building that I was living in New Lisice in Skopje at the time in Macedonia, I immediately returned back to my physical body. You know, as soon as I returned to a physical body, I woke up and definitely I ran to the balcony to see if I can see something. The only thing that I was seeing instead of UFOs, I was seeing holes in the clouds. So in other words, they are cloaking themselves, you know, in the cloud. And on many occasions, like on the bottom right image, you can see those holes even moving. Sometimes one moves in one direction, then another direction. In some occasions, even the entire holes disappear in a split of a second. And there is, like I said, they are at the technological level where they can control all the 5 elements, if you will, and to control the clouds. Even we can do a weather manipulation through HARP and other installations to some degree, but they have reached something that is still beyond our technological capacity. And quite often those holes that I'm referring, you can see the hole and then the 1, 2, 3 objects just pump out from it, you know, and then the military helicopters appear out of nowhere because they can find them on their system. The problem is that certain objects are not detectable on the radar. That's why they employ the infrared, you know, spears and other systems so they can actually see it, you know. It's quite amazing what is happening. So this takes us to advanced nanotechnological devices used for tracking, surveillance, DNA sampling, mind control, psionic energy extraction, inducing sleep paralysis, and etc. In many occasions, tiny objects were discovered that are emitting or eventually receiving certain radio signals from someone. How they got into the system of the biological body, that's a different story. This is the MRI of a brain that shows a foreign object in the splenum of the corpus callosum. So once when the alien implants are inside, let's say, the leg or the arm, it can be surgically removed. But once when it's deep into the brain, any touch of the brain could result in a very high injury, even worse. So many of those devices, if you will, are serving as collectors of information, and information which is further sent to the moon, either directly or through the medium. The medium, what I refer to as a medium, is through those like a cylindrical type of objects that are flying everywhere. quite often the cylindrical type of craft comes down, it releases 1 through 5, 10 orbs of light, if you will, you know, and they spread all around, whatever they're gonna go towards Pacific or Atlantic or US or China, whatever, you know, wherever the target is, you know, and as soon as they got closer, they can literally create a humming sound with the abductees, you know, and can literally push those people into sleeping paralysis or do whatever they want, you know. So pretty much the humming sound is a sound that certain number of people actually are hearing, that it's not hearable on the hearable spectrum, if you will. You know, as soon as the object appears into the atmosphere, penetrates through the atmosphere, it creates certain it actually releases certain frequencies that creates like a hum sound inside the brain. And quite often people that are experiencing this, they reported that it's quite loud, if you will, you know. And as I mentioned, there is a high technology comparing to which concern only our civilization, of course. It's not a high technology to them, if you will. But they can deploy the plasma and they can literally download data, they can upload data to an implant. You know, sometimes the implant itself, you know, it's deep in the brain, and they can actually put a small orb that goes directly into the brain through the opening of the eye. There's so many different varieties which Shadow Government has studied this, you know, extensively. And as I mentioned, when it's close to the surface, you can remove it. And the problem with many people is that this can be also used as advantage. The things that I got in contact with, that they were positive and I utilized the objects to my full extent. They increased my brain capacity probably 15-20 times than an average human person. And many other people can do that, but the thing is, the fear factor is the one which is preventing them to do so. The main figure in this research is Dr. Roger Lear. Unfortunately, we lost him on March 14, 2014, and he did his best. He did everything that he had, you know, in order to push this information out. And in many cases, he was talking about the objects that were removed from the body. And for example, he took a blood serum and put it aside, and then the object that was removed was put it inside this serum, and while it was removed, it broke a couple of pieces. And then when it's put the blood serum of the same patient, if you will, you know, after a few hours, it reassembled itself. In other words, as soon as somewhere out there started to transmit certain frequencies, certain information, you know, it actually started to remotely control the pieces, and the technology was so advanced that it reassembled itself and it started to produce signals. And this particular object, if you will, was emanating information or transmitting information on 14.7 megahertz. You know, so the frequencies differs from object to object. Quite often, those objects have a gray shell around them, which protects the surrounding tissue and doesn't cause infection, if you will. Sometimes it fuses with the nervous system itself, and quite often the non-magnetic marks, if you will, that are photographed under the ultraviolet light are observable with these people. And abductees quite often report strange markings, you know, on their chest or whatever, and certain, let's say, smaller fingers or something, you know. So this is one person from US that literally had a triangle, and she actually took this snapshot, this photo of the plasma shield UFO moving, you know, very close to the proximity where she experienced this, you know, the triangle stuff. And this sometimes can glow, if you will, you know, when they are around, and can activate. And sometimes there are some marks, you know, on the skin which are appearing. Quite often the dreams of the abductees are strange because they start to dream about certain flying crafts, you know. But like I said, since the astral plane is masked, it's very limited. So this is one documentary or film, if you will, that I would definitely recommend when you have spare time. It's called Patient 17, and the director is Jeremy Kenyon, Locker Corbell. The thing is, ordinary guy, you know, he just discovers that there is an object in his right leg, if you will, you know, and they literally scan the leg, and they extract the object. And it turns out that the object is quite special. And I spoke with Steve last year, and he is keen to continue Dr. Rogers' work, you know, but still the resources are the main problem, because this type of research. And when Dr. Roger Lear was around, he was actually funded by the billionaire Robert Bigelow. He actually funded the research, but nowadays there almost no one that deals with this type of research. And he is a material scientist, very, very clever guy, you know, and through a procedure that is called scanning electron microscopy, if you will, they found something very particular. The nanotubes that this object actually has, you know, it's so tiny, just sometimes to the level of the atoms. You know, we are far beyond any technological capacity to reproduce this nanotechnological device, you know. And how is this able to transfer, or actually to receive, you know, information through radio signals? You know, it's quite amazing. And sadly, his conclusion was that most of the masses of humanity are like fish. They really do not know or care what is outside their immediate sphere of influence. In order to change things for the better, we need to change that as a race. And that's a well point, you know, by him. And the isotropic analysis is telling us that the material embedded of the extracted implant that I just showed from the patient 17 was made out of planet. The ultimate goal of this particular research is to hack the alien internet. We have reasons to believe that there is a complex web of communication between the aliens and some supercomputer. Through the alien implant, the genuine abductees are plugged into the system. It is the biggest story of 20th and 21st century. And pretty much, believe it or not, that database or the supercomputer is on the moon, and the moon is artificially placed there. The results show that the object is composed, believe it or not, but from 36 different elements. Nanotechnological device, which is obviously hooked into the nervous system, made of meteoric iron with combination of many precisely chosen and implemented elements to serve as a specific purpose. So pretty much, he said, we got quite a few elements here: boron, sodium, magnesium, titanium, gallium, germanium. The isotropic ratio of zinc 64 and zinc 66 would indicate that these elements are not made from materials found here on Earth. Second opinion. They took the object to Christopher H. Cooper. He is a nanotech specialist in nuclear physics, quantum computation, nanotechnology, and large-scale nanomanufacturing. He examined the results. He actually spent few hours trying to go through the scales, you know, measurements, what we have in the periodic system. And the more he started to research, the more weird it came. And his conclusion was that this object has an elemental analysis of complexity I have never seen before. What are we seeing in something that is highly advanced and fabricated? Comparing with the zinc ratio found on our planet and our solar system, the zinc found in this object indicates that it originates from some other part of our galaxy or beyond. It is difficult to tell for sure. So pretty much this is the case. You know? Super advanced alien nanotechnological device composed from 36 elements hooked into the nervous system. So the question is, what the heck is this nanotechnological device doing in this person's leg, if you will, you know? So 2019, so here we are, and we are so trapped, so to speak, in our own worlds, if you will, thanks to people like Matt, you know, that are trying to actually provide a positive energy, you know, and reconstruction, you know. We really are tuned into our virtual realities. We are stuck into our mobile phones, our internet stuff, you know, our own world, so to speak. Each of us, we try hard, you know, looking through the internet just to search the information, the basis, you know, the more pieces of the missing mosaic, if you will. While in parallel, obviously, we are not in control. There is a presence, extraterrestrial presence, which is far more capable of controlling this planet than us, in no sense. And here we are, we've reached the present day. Unfortunately, we are more towards the technological aspect, very similar like the ancient Atlantis was, you know. But there's part of us, like yourself, that's why you're here, you know, they're still, you know, in tune with that spiritual aspect of the ancient Lemurians, you know. And that's how it actually grows, you know. And we have to understand that if we want to avoid the mistakes that the Asians have did because they were manipulated, we have to understand that peace cannot be achieved through violence, it can only be attained through understanding. And we reach space and we understand where we're living. We are actually on a rocky planet, third planet from the sun, if you will. We are part of the solar system, and it goes a lot deeper, you know, than you have the clusters, superclusters, and then sheets of galaxies, then observable universe, and it's a network of existence, if you will. So the first thing that I asked the ETs, you know, a very long time ago, I said, look, why it's black outside? You go outside at night time and you don't see light. And they said it's like that because this solar system and this area of the space actually exists inside the so-called cosmic void. Till recently, the scientists, they thought that the cosmic voids are completely empty voids of nothing, absolutely no stars, no nothing. But more recent research show that they're also packed with galaxies and stars. They're just dimmer. In other words, what they were saying that most of the manipulation actually, unfortunately, exists in the more regions which are darker, because of the reasons that I will explain towards the end of the lecture. While the most divine creatures, if you will, go more toward those more lighter pathways of this cosmic neural web, if you will, you know. In other words, the beauty, the positiveness, the light, if you will, exists in many forms, and we should be asking ourselves, you know, are we so ignorant to think that we are the most divine spark of intelligence? We are not, you know, we are just one species out of trillions out there, and many have surpassed our, not just technological, but the spiritual knowledge, and they're far, far beyond our capacity, if you will, you know. And comparing to our human size, we are living in a gigantic universe, you know, it's 93 billion light years, if you will, you know. So, just to make a small comparison so you guys will be able to understand me where I'm coming from. As I mentioned on the Paradigm Shift Summit presentation, I don't fully leaning towards the mainstream astrophysics, if you will, you know. I lean more towards the plasma cosmology, but not fully, you know. But nevertheless, this will do. So the latest scan, which again cannot be ignored, they defined that our universe is actually composed from 3 parts. One is 4.9%, and we call that ordinary matter. That's all those galaxies, solar systems, galaxies, clusters, superclusters, and so on and so forth. And then the dark matter, 26.8%, and which doesn't interact with the light in the same way as a visible light and the normal matter does. And the so-called mysterious dark energy, which is probably around 70%, you know, from the entire mosaic, if you will. So, in order to explain, to get to the point, the scans that were done in the part which are referred as a dark matter, they found 5 different densities. In other words, we are seeing 5 different planes of existence. However, when they do the scanning on the region which they referred as a dark energy, they couldn't find any fluctuations in the density. It's one huge divine plane of existence, if you will. So, in a nutshell, just to make a complex matter very simple, we are part of the universe which exists and has 7 planes of existence. The ordinary matter 1, dark matter 5, and dark energy 1, so 7 altogether. And as we are actually tuning into this, we have a multi-dimensional presence. We can actually travel through all those dimensions, but the problem at the moment, the genetics it's not active, you know. And the important part, which I was asked many times, the first question, logical question is, if I deport my physical body and take astral adventure, how I'm connected with the physical body? Most of the ignorant, let's say, people, they will say there is like a silver cord which goes from the solar plexus to the solar plexus of the astral body that extends to the infinity, you know. And then in the moment of death, that silver cord cuts and you cannot return back to the physical body. Pretty similar like babies having you know, their own stuff, which is complete, if you know what I mean. It doesn't work like that. Pure essence. Our intelligence, for example, I control this body now. It's like our vehicle. If I tell my let's say, body to move the mic from this onto that one, I'm just expressing my intelligence, if you will. When I manifest into the astral dimension, I use more subtle body. When I go even further, I actually use even more subtle body, which is less dense and with higher speed of vibration. And it communicates through immaterial DNA signals. The DNA itself, it's even on the physical spectrum, it's antenna, which means it sends signals, it receives signals, and it actually provides a very high executive software. And that's how it runs the entire system, if you will. But this doesn't stop with the physical body. It also, through the photons, it actually can send. So that's why it's like an IP address. You go out of the body, you go into the astral dimension, and then like an IP address, as soon as it's over, whatever the case is going to be, you're always waking up in your physical body, and you never end up waking up in your neighbor's body, if you will. You know? So the physical body that we have is pretty much obvious, you know, so we'll not spend much time. So DNA is the main software of what runs everything, you know, where the brain is the processor and the heart is actually the life, the pulse of it, if you will. And between the physical body and the astral body is the so-called etheric body. The etheric body never departs the physical body, you know, it's always interfused with the physical body. That's where all those energetic centers and channels are interconnected. The one parts where the energetic energetic channels. So according to the Asian traditions, there are 72,000 energetic channels that are interconnected in this etheric body. And where the endings of that etheric body is, the nerves ending are also connected. So which means that there is a transfer of energy which occurs every single night, because without the sleep we cannot function, if you will. And it never departs the physical body unless it's pulled by the ETs for a certain purpose, or eventually in the moment that we refer to as a physical death. Because after the physical death, the consciousness or the higher principles of the consciousness, if you will, move into a more subtle vehicle, if you will, and this etheric body starts to decompose pretty much the same as the physical body decomposed behind. But nevertheless, when the Kundalini energy is rising, it's always rising to the etheric body. And sometimes people report the sleeping paralysis. The sleeping paralysis is something which is highly feared around the internet. People report demons, people report dark forces and similar stuff, while in reality it's very simple. You go outside the physical body without conscience and you start to dream. And let's say, as you start to dream, you start to see your own palms. And that experience actually takes you to the point that you realize that it's you, and then takes you to the full recognition that you're dreaming. The moment that you realize that you're dreaming, it breaks the hologram that I was describing in the astral plane. And as that happens, immediately, instead of staying into the astral dimension or physically awakened, you have been awakened, but you cannot move. There is usually a buzzing sound and a high-pitched sound which happens, you know, quite often. But the thing is, you cannot move because your consciousness didn't go back to the physical body. It actually synchronized, desynchronized with the astral body and synchronized with the etheric body. That's why you cannot move, you cannot control the avatar, neither that you can actually pull yourself out through your astral body. You're stuck pretty much. And out of which, how to exit those days, I fully explained in the books, you know, how it's done. And pretty much that's the case. And then we have the astral body, which is a vehicle, you know, which is immaterial in nature. It can pass through walls, it can fly, and so many other stuff. What is quite interesting is that it keeps it duplicates what the physical body is wearing, which is quite amazing, and I never actually get over it, so to speak, you know. For example, on the top left picture, this is the guy who actually passed away, unfortunately, in accident, and those from the cameras are literally showing that his astral body is exactly the same like his dead body that is lying down, you know, on the ground, if you will, you know. So it's quite amazing. And during the sleeping time, you know, the astral body goes out and it starts to recharge, if you will, you know, on that energy which exists, you know. But the problem is it's quite limited, you know. And when someone starts to experiment with astral projection, you know, it gets really interesting. So. Pretty much that's some of what the ETs are actually doing with the orbs, if you will. You know, the astral body can stuck sometimes, and like I said, there is no silver cord to be cut or whatever, you know. So that's not the case. That's one of the main factors why people don't practice astral projection, if you will, you know. And the self-luminescent body, it's a less dense than the astral body, but far more energetic, and its speed of vibration is far more profound. With the astral body, you cannot depart the planet. You reach around 40 Ks, and then you reach like an invisible barrier, your astral projection cuts off, and you wake up physically immediately. The same happens even when a spirit dies, for example. If it's still in the astral body, it cannot depart the planet at all. However, with a self-luminescent body, it can depart the planet, and not even that. With the astral body, you cannot see the orbs, you cannot see the UFOs, you cannot see the aliens from time to time, but with a self-luminescent body, you can absolutely. That's how I figured it out pretty much most of the stuff which is happening. And comparing to the normal astral vehicle, if you will, the consciousness, this one is far more energetic, if you will, you know. And despite those four vehicles of the consciousness, that consciousness actually is utilizing, there are another 3 higher plasmic vehicles, but they're so far away. So pretty much the plasma is the one, the fourth state of matter. It's all about energy, if you will, and pretty much 99.9% of the matter in the visible universe is plasma. Depending on the thermal equilibrium, it can be defined as a thermal or not thermal plasma, heavily used in the crop circles, you know. So in 1964, Russian astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev, he defined the 3 levels of civilization, type 1, 2, and 3, based on their capacity to harness and use power, as well as the amount of knowledge the civilization has access to. And our solar system has abundance of type 2 civilization, if you will, and the type 3 civilization is the one on the bottom right, where you can see the actual size of the sun marked with a white circle and the vehicle that just came out of it, if you will, you know. And there are different sizes of type 2, if you will, that are observed near. And the credit goes to Dr. Norman Bergman. His research was fundamental, and he had the guts to step forward and to tell his fellow doctors, you know, no guys, this is not what you're saying. Those electromagnetic vehicles are literally flying around the Saturn. They're creating those rings, you know. On 14th of March 1989, during the space shuttle mission STS-21, the Dr. astronaut James Barclay, taken by excitement, said a phrase that leaves little to the imagination. He said, "Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under observance." So pretty much they understand what is happening, and it's always, this is from John Glenn's, you know, when he took some photo with his private camera, supposedly from Apollo 30, but this was actually taken from the Earth's orbit. And it's a lot of stuff which are happening out there, if you will, you know. So it's quite amazing things. So even plasma things that are appearing, you know, everywhere, and they're seen, you know. They're just controlling pretty much everything that we can see. And today we are at the type 0 civilization. Hopefully, if we remain like that, you know, we will transit towards type 1 civilization in 100 to 200 years from now, you know. Type 3 civilization is a very interesting one, because it actually controls the stars, it can control supernovas, you know. It's quite impressive. And this object, which I already explained in different presentation, is just the pure example of the object, which actually shows a plasma wheel, which is only visible on one filter from the Solar Dynamic Observatory, you know, not on the rest. And sometimes they open the sun gates, if you will, from inside out, and the objects come out. And as I mentioned, using the cosmic system, metro system, if you will, they're actually traveling through space. So this is how we look at the sun, and this is how our star looks to someone else, you know. This is the X-rays, you know, when they actually shoot a plasma beam, they open a sun gate, which lasts for 1, 2, or 3 seconds. Even 3 seconds is too long, you know. And then that's how fast they move, you know. And I already explained this before, you know. Every time when there is a movement that you can see, like a trail which is left, you know, from the vehicle, they're using a plasma, you know. Literally, they create a thrust by using the plasma, and pretty much it's found in abundance in the solar system. It's quite amazing. Those ones are also worth to mention, because I call those transporters. They shoot a plasma beam. They usually use a sound frequency which actually creates a disturbance in the solar plasma, and they either shoot 100, 200, 300 objects in, or they're sucked in from the sun itself, and then they literally shoot another plasma beam, if you will, to a different direction, maybe Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, whatever the case is, and on that location there is another vehicle which accepts that beam, if you will, and that's how the objects are transported. This is another example of what I'm saying. You know, it's quite amazing what is out there, if you will. And to be frank, you know, the military is always in the Solar Dynamic Observatory, and sometimes their server goes down for 1 to 2 days, you know, until they clear up the anomalies. You know, sometimes they put like a black squares, you know, where the object is seen if it's a large one. So pretty much it's a repetition. This is the interesting part. These beams of light were shot from Saturn, if you will. You know, it's quite amazing piece of work, exactly what was described and seen. So NASA has a difficulty to explain those images. You can see a cylindrical object, huge, you know. Like I said, just to remind you, the size of the sun itself is the white circle, you know, at the bottom, you know. And it's quite interesting. And the shadow government obviously knows about it, and unfortunately the abuse is huge, you know. Quite often the females report, you know, strange stuff. So how does it work? Object comes, it releases orbs of light, and then those orbs of light, they come very close, they start to transmit certain frequencies, which Dr. Lear actually mapped some of those frequencies. They are they were very reserved for all the list of the frequencies that they have discovered, but the specific frequencies are literally tuning into, or how should I put it, they're activating the implant if there is one, and this implant creates a vibration, it creates a sleeping paralysis, and then those beings come, if you will, you know, and do whatever they're doing, you know. And the crop circle, this is a very nice part, because in opposite with the negative ones, there is a strong positive alliance, you know. And I've been in contact with this intelligence, and I'm grateful for everything they have taught me, you know, and I was able to understand. But the shadow government definitely keeps an eye on every genuine crop circle formation that appears, you know, through their surveillance system. You know, they want to understand what is happening, and the thing is they're also using the plasma energy shield, because that's the common, you know, type of propulsion, you know, and to use. And they're sending us the message definitely, and obviously the creatures have triple DNA, and also the different type of skin, you know, and similar things. And they literally live on 3 parts in the solar system in parallel with us, Mars, and 4 dots of that was supposed to be Jupiter, if you will. So I've been in contact with these creatures for a long time, you know, and they gave us a note back in 2001 that their population at the time was 12.7 billion comparing to the human population, which was 6.2 billion at the time. And the Jupiter itself, they have actually put at 4 dots, because the Jupiter itself is huge, it's massive, its gravity can crush bones, but the 4 moons of Jupiter can provide suitable biological existence. And those are the magnetic particles that I was referring before, that were discovered in the crop circles. And obviously there is so much weird thing going on, you know, like 2 counter-rotating vortices interacting with one another, you know. So pretty much what they are doing, they are interconnected. From what I was explained, every genuine crop circle emanates energy signature, which lasts about 6 weeks from what the researchers were able to detect. In other words, during those 6 weeks, it's interconnected with other crop circles and create like an acupuncture point on the planet itself. They're not just healing the planet, but they're disrupting the hologram which is uploaded into the astral plane, and they're also contacting the humankind, the representative from the humankind that are able to, that are on the level of awakening, if you will, you know. So pretty much that's what's happening. But unfortunately, there is like a war going on, you know, right before our eyes, if you will, but we don't understand it, you know. The way to the point that I was able to understand, as soon as a positive genuine crop circle appears, the negative ones immediately dispose, you know, their craft, and they start to, let's say, dispose like a certain type of dark plasma which chokes the energy which is inside. So it's so much things that are going on around, you know, like a dark stuff which doesn't appear, you know, on the positive ones. And even Colin Andrews, you know, he was a huge asset, if you will, to the crop circle research, and unfortunately he started being funded by the Rockefeller, and he changed his story. Obviously, there is so much evidence, and I always mention this example because it's very good. So it happened in 2012. A group of tourists actually went to see this crop circle. Unfortunately, as soon as they got very close, the military helicopter started harassing them to move them away. As soon as they backed off, the military helicopter started spraying something directly into the crop circle, if you will, you know. And in other words, if all the crop circles are made by jokers and with ropes and boards, so why is the military deploying scalar wave technology or microwave technology, if you will, you know? And as soon as the genuine crop circle is created, it's so divine, it's so positive, you know, that even if you go inside and you have a health problem, it can help you, you know. Your hair starts to experience static, you know, a very, very powerful energy, if you will. But as soon as the military detects the genuine crop circle, you know, they send their people to take samples, and sometimes they send the helicopters to radiate with the microwave energy. As the microwave energy radiates, you know, they're actually blowing the nodes, because the crop circle makers, which are not physical beings, I have to clear that. They are just utilizing plasma balls, like we were utilizing, let's say if we have a drone, and we just going to send the drone to fly, if you will, you know. So they're utilizing the plasma technology to flatten the crop, if you will. But nevertheless, that's what is happening. Before the military or the negative ones tamper with the crop circle is a divine place of divine energy. But as soon as they tamper, people report vomiting and similar stuff. Like I said, I'm just explaining the things that are missing, that are cannot be found out there. And quite often when you come to the genuine crop circle, you know, you come closer with your hands, you know, the energy just, and the blood goes down and up, you know, as you come, you know. It's quite amazing what is happening. And they were saying about the flower of life, about the seed of life, egg of life, flower of life, shield, which is fully explained in the books, you know, what needs to be done. It's quite amazing, and they are so positive. They have so much belief in humanity that it's just breaking me apart. And that was the driving force behind all the things that I have did in my life regarding to this research, because they were so kind, so positively, so oriented towards our human potential that we can pull this off, you know. That's just remarkable. I don't see that much any longer in people, unfortunately. So it's all happening. And I spoke with Wilson Kitch, you know, last year. He's also an amazing guy, you know, and he's saying, and this is another just short before we start to go towards the evolution of human consciousness.
A good example of an event that isn't visible to the human eye, but the cameras picked up clearly because they work in the infrared range and are very sensitive, was this summer at Adam's Grave. Now, an interesting series of events happened at Adam's Grave. On this particular night, 2 helicopters were flying a perimeter around Adam's Grave. What can only be described as a glowing ball of infrared light emerged from the ground. As it emerged from the ground, it hovered until the helicopters flew towards it. And as soon as the helicopters had committed to following it, it accelerated away 20 miles in a matter of a couple of seconds. That's 0 to 600 miles an hour in a couple of seconds. That's the kind of thing, and the human eye could not see it. I could not see it, the colour cameras could not see it. The infrared cameras could see it as clear as day. As you see, there'll be a glow, there we go, of the ball emerging from the ground. It then hovers, well, it attracts the attention of 2 helicopters that are about to appear from the right-hand side here. Here we go, the lower helicopter and the higher one. And as it does, it then races off onto the horizon. So fast it just almost blinks out. There it is, there it goes. Horizon to horizon.
Yeah. So it takes a very expensive equipment, you know, to be able to detect all that stuff, you know. This is quite interesting because they detected, you know, quite interesting researchers. They detected like a ball of light, and one of the researchers actually went nearby and literally played hide and seek, you know, with a person, you know. This is another thing to understand, why there is a conflict. We don't have much time yet, I have to wrap it up. But this is the case. Positive guys come, they want to flatten the crop. As soon as they start to, let's say, muck around, if you will, or just fly around the crop, you know, the negative disks or the balls of dark energy, if you will, they come and they chase them away. So this is what you will see from the video. If you will just pay attention that the dark ones will be coming from the 45 degrees angle, if you will. You know, just give me a sec. Hold on. I really want you to see these guys.
That particular year in 2006, suddenly 2 balls of light came from the air, down in the crop, sniffing around, flying around, and went away up in the air, gone. Another one came, did the same thing, sniffing
watch
around,
out, 45 degrees is
went
difficult
up in
to
the
see.
air, vanished.
Yep.
I also recorded some strange flashes, really bright flashes, in really sunny weather, just as now, today. But they appear on tape. And sometimes you do see flashes in the corner of your eyes. I always thought it was my imagination, but my films proved different. So they seem to be interested in crop circles just as we are. But I don't know why.
So what we're actually seeing is literally the negative type 2 that just came, you know. As soon as the orbital flight detected, you know, those 2 disks, they took off, you know, because there is a conflict. What I'm trying to say, there is a hope. We are not alone in this mess, if you will. There is an intelligence which is trying to assist us, you know, but we have to do something also. We have to wake up and start using our potential. So those are some examples that what he was referring, you know, in his recording, you know, and there's so much different stuff, and the positive ones, when they are positive, you know, they usually directed straight towards the Asian horses in UK, and when they're the one that is disrupting, you can see they're literally. Let me just show you much better example. Do we have it here? Here. So here, as you can see, you see it doesn't hit directly into the horse. It goes a bit to the side. Do you know what I'm trying to say? They try to disrupt the ley lines, the energy lines which are there, you know. So it's so much different. They can write a code, if you will, which disrupts. And in this place, you can see when it's zoomed, it does show, you know, the little gray, if you will, with certain technology, which is there, you know. So in 2010, after a huge download of good quality data, the negative ones actually took the implant out, you know. It was hurting for 3, 4, even 5 months, you know, but healed. But nevertheless, I lost the contact, you know, at least to the degree that I had before. But nevertheless, I already understood the big picture, if you will, you know. And there is a complex web of communication between certain groups of extraterrestrials and super advanced computer on the moon. So these old slides I will just literally fly through, you know. It's a shame that we couldn't actually share about more until we get to the point that it starts to make sense. You know. It's quite amazing. It's a strange reality, and no one actually talks about it, you know, when we go out of here and it's happening, and it's unreal. Just give me a few moments to get to the point. So this is the dynamic in general. That's what they do, and you can actually find for yourself as soon as you start to do a proper research. So certain type of UFOs, they come, they release orbs of light, they start to multiply, they go pretty much everywhere, you know, they do the observance and similar things, you know. Pretty much they can actually go, those are dividers, as you can see, from few orbs they can spread to hundreds, thousands, millions, even billions, you know. And pretty much what is happening even here, this is how when you go outside with your astral body, you will not see much. When you go with a self-luminescent body, you will see exactly what the camera is showing. This is how the astral space looks like. It's all polluted, if you will, you know. And even here, as I mentioned, that those orbs are used, you know, to project certain holographic visions, if you will, you know. Fortunately, I don't have time for this. Another thing that I can actually show you, which is also important, I just have 2 minutes before I have to. Just give me a sec. Those are the plasma sheets that I was discussing before, and those are picked up as far as I was able to see by those craft, you know. This one was actually recorded in 2013 in Gold Coast, you know, so it's very close, you know. So it's all happening, if you will, you know. Those are the unfortunately the problem. This is our problem. You see here, the ones that are coming out that are glowing orbs, they're not the issue, but those are the issues, those ones. On the moon, the surface, as I mentioned, is holographically influenced, but inside is a holo. These things open and these creatures actually come out, you know, we can see from the telescopes. And those are the ones that are causing the problems, you know. The moon is put there for a purpose, and it's 400 times more than the sun, 4 times closer to the sun, and that this is not just dust or whatever, it's well observed in space also, you know. So it's quite amazing what is happening, and even the phenomena which exist in space, it's not what it seems to be, you know. It's just unreal, and they can control pretty much everything. Sometimes you get unexplained wave of anger, you know, you want to crush someone, you know, or whatever, you know, and similar thoughts, you know, that. But nevertheless, they're always observing, you know, always observing in one form or another, you know. So people call this paranormal or whatever, but it's always happening. So here we are. We have to conclude in 20 minutes from now. So there is a sufficient evidence to conclude that type 2 and 3 civilizations have found ways to utilize everything in the electromagnetic spectrum, since everything talks to everything and everything is interconnected with everything. Knowing these interactions and interconnections would give these civilizations a huge advantage to experience a high quality of existence, but they do not follow a moral path. It also opens the door for subtle manipulation over all inferior living forms. As far as I was able to discover a special type of radio signal where information is encoded by polarization of electromagnetic vectors manipulate human DNA where installed pre-recorded holograms. In other words, the abductee suddenly gets unexplainable desire to take a day or two off from work to go camping in a remote area, and he or she feels an urge to do this urgently. Following the inner impulses, the abductee feels as he is her own, not aware of the deceptive and hypnotic nature of the projected holographic thoughts and feelings, goes to the remote area, and from there it's a usual story. Mysterious light appear in the sky and I've experienced missing time. After the genetic checkup, DNA extraction, replacement of implant, crossbreeding or removal of fetus, or whatever the reason for the abduction is, the abductee is returned to the location where he or she was taken. The memories of the abduction scenario are masked. The abductee suddenly faces a state of confusion, often unexplained fear, strongly sensing that something very weird just happened, but he or she has no recollection of it. Sometimes bleeding from the nose or some strange marks on the body appear, which makes the taste in the mouth even bitter. Despite there are so many UFOs on Earth, they are constantly coming and going and engaged into various genetic programs. There would be a really waste of time to constantly check every single abductee in their farm. Therefore, in most cases, the first part of the talk, the task, if you will, is to physically abduct the subject and implant him or her with nanotechnological device that will be compatible with a larger DNA pulses or waves that are coming from the sophisticated alien Monsanto controlling system. Afterwards, most of the time, the holographic DNA programming comes directly from the special astral DNA waves, just remember this one, transmitted and amplified by certain type of UFOs and implemented via plasma orbs that are sent or remotely controlled, programmed to closely visit abductees' physical environment. The programmed or sophisticated alien remote drones, if you will, via glowing energetic pulses can easily hack the human DNA and produce any kind of desired behavior for whatever purpose is needed. So the thing is, they are monitoring every time when there is a if you see a new life is born, if you will, you know, or it's fused into the fetus, they actually know exactly that that's the place. So not to mention the spontaneous miscarriages, you know, which are happening. So it's literally something which is very, very disturbing. So here we are, we have only 20 minutes to finalize everything. Planet Earth has become an elaborate zoo created by few hyper-intelligent alien species. Alien abduction programs, alien implant programs, alien hybridization programs, mind control, plasma or surveillance, hacking and full control of the astral plane on planet Earth, blocking the nexus and awakening process of the planet Earth. Shadow government is dealing with their own ways, but we have to awake. We have to actually understand that there is a problem. We cannot literally ignore. We cannot literally tune into our own stuff, doing our own stuff, meditation, and that this is not happening. It is happening. And the first thing is through just tuning into our own inner potential, start to realize how to activate the TNT in the pineal gland, which will expand our frontier of perception. And the more Kundalini energy awakes, it will activate the portion of the DNA and brain. We will have to actually resist what is happening through the psionic plasma, if you will. You know. So pretty much there is only way out of here. That's a spiritual awakening. That's why we need to actually evolve, if you will. So this is the download. This is where everything streams into, if you will. And that's the base, the core of where everything starts, the evolution of the human consciousness. And currently, in parallel with many other existing programs that humanity is not aware of, there is a covert alien genetic program that causes a genetic mutation. How long it's going to take until this starts to kick in, you know, the children will start to be born with high telepathic and telekinetic abilities, is difficult to say. It could be a few decades, it could be hundreds of years, it could be 1,000 or more, whatever. But it will happen since the process of the genetic mutation and the subtle DNA reactivation has already begun. In 2011, the first official boy with triple DNA was born, and they made it as a disease, but more and more are born nowadays. And those kids are different, if you will. They can tune into the universe much more differently than most of us. And they are not interested into food or whatever, but their interest, their heart is in the stars, if you will. As those kids will grow, they will interact, and even the further generations of the special children will be even more special. As these children grow, they will start to experience and see things that no one around them will, and that the advantage will provide them higher knowledge and understanding. And this is already happening. People are actually separating from the old element. They are tuning into oneness. They let go and they refuse the old system of living. You know, they respect the animals. They stop eating meat and similar stuff. And so this is definitely something that we need to all reconsider, if you will. They understand that by consuming a dead and tortured animal flesh, you know, we are polluting our energetic field, you know. And by developing the chi energy, and it will make us stronger, because the life force doesn't come from the meat or whatever. So it's quite interesting note. It says, I alone cannot change society for the better, but I can radically transform my own consciousness, overtuning the conditioning that limits my potential. We can all do this one by one. Over time we can change ourselves to the degree that society changes from the inside out, giving birth to a new way of being, manifesting our birthright of living in a peaceful and abundant world. Have no fear, trust yourself, live to your full potential, and that's what is advisable to be done. You know, and that's what many people are actually seeing. As these people that are born different, they will grow. Their mothers will be more open, and they will understand the meaning of the universe. They will be in tune to the cosmic internet, if you will. You know. But in order to understand where exactly this is going to lead, we need to go back in time, actually towards the beginning of time. So, to the best of my understanding, what I was shown, everything that we see in the universe today originates from something that was created by the primal cosmic source consciousness, or the great cosmic designer, if you will, at the beginning of time. This source consciousness, for purposes still unknown to us, left the freedom of choice in this universe by giving it two polarities. It produced light and darkness, if you will. Even today, these primal forces, a total opposite of each other, are still the primal impulses of all intelligent movement in the visible universe. Every second something is born and something dies, something is created and something is destroyed. pretty much it's intelligent everywhere. Those are the forces of the darkness that we can see in the universe, and those are the forces of the light, which are completely opposite. And through those emanations, if you will, the consciousness actually arises. So one force pushes towards the evolution, while the other one pushes against the evolution, if you will. The purpose of creation of this universe was to serve as an evolutionary catalyst, a school that conscious living forms would learn, mature, and evolve through a variety of cosmic experiences. The primary source, superconsciousness, if you will, created this universe as a cosmic womb to deliver a new baby source consciousness. I know that it sounds very far out, but please hear me out. The ultimate purpose of all existence in the universe is giving birth to another gigantic cosmic consciousness that will learn, grow, mature, and evolve to the point where it will be capable of performing complex cosmic multidimensional tasks that are beyond human understanding. Anyway, it is becoming obvious that during the eons of time, those two rival forces, if you will, have grown to a point that they understood that in order for the universe to exist at all, and all conscious living forms in it, there must be a balance. And that's why we are seeing this balance pretty much everywhere in the universe. The intelligence comes from the cores of the galaxies, if you will, in a form of the double helix or higher helix. You know, that's how it literally happens around the space. So there are many cosmic species living in the universe, and many of them discovered the psionic powers of the consciousness long before human species appeared on the cosmic scene. Some cosmic species use those powers for greater good and unselfish purposes, and in order to grow, while the others for evil, selfish and destructive purposes. The ones that they use the powers of evil were falling deeper into the darkness, slavery and misery. The more powerful they got abusing other species, the more they were lost in ultimate evil. However, certain percentage of cosmic species that were utilizing the powers of consciousness for greater good evolved into something more profound. They have separated from the material phenomena and are now in superior immaterial state of cosmic existence. It is very interesting that in most positive species, the process of conscious evolution started in a similar way, through their children being born different, advanced and more superior, if you will. They first became telepathic and psychokinetic, and then they slowly started to utilize more complex cosmic psionic powers of the consciousness. It is actually not mind over matter, it's actually mind over plasma, the energy. To continue, in time, like magnets, these children often start to be fascinated and attracted to each other and start gathering into groups. After a number of generations, things often progress to a stage that over 50% of children of certain species are born special or genetically superior, if you will, what intelligence and access to the psionic force is concerned comparing to the old element. At this stage, these gifted children, as they grow and develop even more, becoming extraordinary young individuals, they start to realize that the next step is to explore the idea of making a telepathic bond and uniting their powers. A form of experimentation begins as they tuning into meditative oneness. They start to feel the presence of something very powerful, observing and guiding their every move, something divine and beyond the material plane of existence. Relatively quickly, they realize that this meditative oneness is so powerful and so efficient that provides a lot higher insight of the hidden sequence of the universe and stronger connection to everything that there is. This further leads towards longer and more extended fuse of the individual spark of consciousness into one huge group consciousness, until no individual consciousness wants to separate from the whole and wants to get back to the individual body. In the next stage, while their bodies will be in static, in sitting, lying, standing mode, or levitating in deep meditative trance, their consciousness will experience divine bliss inside the group superconsciousness, where there is no need for dominance or fight for equality, since millions of individual sparks of consciousness are one and function as one. They will become a single entity, a single interconnected consciousness, as we ourselves are the sums of our myriad cells. From this stage, it usually does not take long when this oneness bonds with the mysterious driving force that was behind everything from the very start, a far more superior gigantic cosmic consciousness. By now, this superior cosmic consciousness is a sum of so many cosmic species. Long ago it left the tyranny of the material behind, material world. Even since it was always trying to grow, extend its powers and its awareness of its universe, and it's always conscious of the intelligence everywhere. When it recognized that some species is almost ready, it sends its emissaries, genetic engineers, to do its bidding, to prepare the species for the ultimate transformation. In the final stage of the transformation process, a direct contact and bonding with a gigantic cosmic mega superconsciousness is established. All those millions of species born in this universe, bonded in divine oneness, have been waiting for the new species to join them, and now the time is ripe for that to happen. In other words, at this final stage, the unity consciousness of the entire single species will be getting ready for the dimensional jump and the final metamorphosis, if you will, with the cosmic consciousness, and they will actually achieve it. So summarized, in most cases, in the cosmos, the evolutionary process of intelligent species will go through 3 phases. The first phase will be awakening and basic interconnection. The second phase will be higher interconnection, self-exploration, generation of universal knowledge, and testing the limits of its power and intelligence. The final and the third phase will be ultimate interconnection, ultimate growth of power and intelligence, and ultimate oneness with the divine cosmic consciousness of the cosmos. In 7 billion people, I have found only one reference what I was told, and that is an old book from Arthur Clarke, and it's called Childhood's End. And it's something very, very close to what I was shown, so definitely I recommend that one. So just to conclude, in ancient past, the Lemurians came as closest to what was just described. That's why the ultimate intelligent darkness sent one of its armies, dark plasma creatures, if you will, to stop the fusing process with the consciousness of the cosmos that was almost in final stages. So what we are seeing here is the meditative oneness that I just explained. They were able to tune into one super consciousness, not just able to do astral traveling, they were able to terraform the planet itself. They were so powerful. And that's where it ended, but unfortunately with the dark forces observed that that's the case, they are ready for the merging with the super consciousness, or departing from the material cosmos, if you will. They send out the dark ones. But nevertheless, they actually, many of those, they departed, they left the system, if you will. So all this stuff that you are seeing in the ancient Buddha structures is the same meditative oneness that I'm actually describing, are fused into one immaterial, but as I mentioned, it was disrupted by the negative ones. So still after thousands of years, the conscious evolution of interconnected minds is emerging again. The process has begun and is happening within. And in time, those humans will start to actually do some more. There will be more and more special humans that will be born. And they will not be born just with triple DNA and far more functional brain, but it also with a superior intelligence and amazing ability to utilize psionic plasma force of the universe. And it won't be long until they will see beyond the deception which is happening in this solar system. They will become one with the soul of the universe, if you will. So for the last 11,600 years, planet Earth and the entire solar system has been under control of the dark deceiving forces. But there is a contra force which is pushing towards the evolution. And those kids will be very special, as I mentioned. They will utilize the power of the flower of life shield, if you will. And that's the ultimate message of the crop circle makers. And there is so much stuff that it's already described in the books. They will unleash their potential, and they will interconnect into oneness, and eventually they will break free. They will remove the deception from this solar system with a divine energy, and they will create a heaven on earth, like once was in the time of Lemuria, if you will. So the unconditional love is the internal vibrational resonance of source consciousness that holds the fabric of the universe together, and that's the main driving force of my existence. So it took me 30 years to process all this data, and now my task is done, if you will. So during this presentation, I tried my best to give you a gift, I'm missing pieces of the puzzle, if you will, which will probably trigger further research to every single one. And the people who are into meditation, who wants to transform, there is abundance of information given in my books, how to tune into outer states of consciousness and visit the immaterial space, if you will, and also to establish a contact. So pretty much my journey has been, the purpose of my journey has been to deliver this information. So 30 years of processing of data of the various subjects and fields, if you will, they were just come to this. So in a sense, I was a conduit between the human and non-human intelligence, and now the message is delivered. And I hope that this information will be recorded and given to the future generations, that we'll be able to cope with it, and they will be able to take it further. So I will start and finish, with the same thought, I honor that place in you where the universe resides, and when I'm in that place in me and you are in that place in you, we are all one. And thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was worth of that. Guys, we have only 5 minutes. Is there any questions? Yeah, that's a good one, huh? Okay.
5 minutes.
Any questions? Yeah, you want to stand?
Can we have an afterglow group starting in Brisbane?
Afterglow?
Sorry?
Can we have a group starting in Brisbane as an afterglow?
I'm retiring from this field. This is my last appearance.
So if you haven't written down your name and email address, make sure you do it before you leave. We'll send out some information, and whoever wants to gather, then please do that.
I'm happy to host.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Just put a little star next to your name. Alright, so once again, please join me in welcoming and thanking Pane for an incredible day. Incredible day. If you haven't grabbed his books yet, I highly encourage you to do them. You do, because they are beyond coffee table editions. They are reference manuals that you can go back to over time and time and time again to pull out that information. If you have any questions, then feel free to connect with Pane or myself via the Facebook event page that you would have booked through, or at least seen the information. And if you, like I said previously, if you haven't given us your name and email address and you'd like to remain on the contact list, so to speak, then please do that before you go as well. So again, thank you, Pane. Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so we wish you a fantastic Sunday evening, and you can make your way out the same way, down the lift, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Definitely a recipe, that isn't it?